Good afternoon. Hello, how are you? Thank you again for clicking on my channel. So today I am going to talk about the movie Undertone, which I literally just finished watching. I finally got to watch it. I know it's been out for some time now, but this wasn't one of those movies that I was like, I don't know, anticipating or whatever. But apparently, this is what some people are called one of the scariest movies out there. I guess in this year or something like that. For me personally, I felt this movie was so boring. Maybe up until the last 5 minutes, and that's where like shit started to happen. Um, so the premise of this movie is the host of a popular paranormal podcast becomes haunted by terrifying recordings mysteriously sent her way. This is what you want to call folk horror, which I've never heard of, monster horror, psychological horror, supernatural, and regular old good old horror. I'm trying to find something to keep this from falling, but it just seems like it. I don't know. Maybe there. I don't know. Anyway, I'm not familiar with some of these people in here because, like, literally, you have really one actor, but you have two that are being seen, and then you have other people as like voices and stuff. You know what I'm saying? So Nina Curie plays Evie. Don't know who that is. Um, Adam DeMarco plays Justin. You don't ever see him. He's just another or one of her friends that is also part of the podcast. They both host this podcast together. Michelle Duque plays Mama. Um, and you again you don't see these people, but they're the ones who sent in this mysterious email slash recordings. um Kina plays Jessa. Jeff Young plays Mike. Ryan Turner plays her boyfriend, Darren, Evie's boyfriend. And again, these other people you don't see them, so it's like why are they there? You know what I'm saying? Like, who do we really care who these people are? Ari Milan plays Dr. Ram, and Marisol Delandre plays the nurse. Who gives a fuck, right? Um. Anyway, um, it again for me watching this movie was very boring, very very boring. I heard like some notes on this movie where it's again from other people talking like it's one of the scariest movies that you'll ever see. And when you hear that, I'm already underwhelmed because I haven't seen a really scary movie in a long time. Maybe since Evil Dead Rise. And even for that, like I don't find that very scary. It's just more like gore horror, you know? Um, but I haven't seen anything that's like I'm like, oh my god, I can't sleep at night or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So, um, Evie is living in this house with her mother. Apparently, she's on her deathbed. She's basically like a vegetable. She hasn't eaten. in several days. Um, so she's taking care of her. While doing so, she's doing this podcast with her friend. Again, you don't see this person. It's just all through the computer and them having some like small talk about like, hey, how's your mom doing? All that, blah blah blah. Boring shit. Very boring, very underwhelming. And then, as I was saying, the last 5 minutes is where it starts to be like, oh, this is kind of not scary, but kind of eerie in a way. Um, where it kind of gives you like, ooh, what's next? And then it just leaves on a cliff note. So, do we get a sequel? Do we not? I haven't heard much about that. Um, but again, so these people, Jess and uh, uh, um, what is the other person's name? Mike. I'm assuming Mike is the one who sent the email of the recordings. But he was talking again through the recordings that his girlfriend, maybe slash wife, fiance, whoever, um, has been saying things and in her sleep. She doesn't believe him. The girlfriend that is. She's like, okay, well, I'm gonna record you. So he starts recording, and then like from episode one or recording one all the way down to 10, things starts to develop. It's just more like, oh, okay, I'm like saying things in my sleep, nothing to be like, okay. And then all of a sudden you're hearing like water being turned on to pipes banging. And then all of a sudden you're hearing a baby cry, and they don't have a baby. Um, and then all of this, all is under the how do you want to say it? Like, it's things are being, I can't figure out the word I want to use, but it's also part of kids, children's, um, folk tales. Like maybe like nursery rhymes, stuff like that, where you like London bridges falling down, stuff like that. Baba Black Sheep, um, uh, all those things that really have death in the midst of them. Like you don't like. I never thought as a child. I didn't know this until like a young adult that London Bridges was a very dark um, nursery rhyme. But then when you think about it, ashes falling down, it makes a lot of sense. I'm not very familiar with Baba Black Sheep, but that is another one of those. And uh, so then they're having to listen to it backwards of like what is kind of being said. And then again, getting to episode, we're recording 9 to 10. That's when it starts to really like, oh shit, shit's really happening. And then they're getting like live call-ins on their last um, um, podcast, and they're like, "Oh, you should never had listened to the final one. Now, uh, things are about to happen. Blah blah blah." And um, so, like I said, like in the last 5 minutes, it's giving um, it's like possession in a way to um what is the name of that movie? Um poltergeist. Because like the um the light fixture is like swinging back and forth as it's flashing. The chairs are like upside down. That really it was giving me poltergeist in that moment. The mother has been in bed since you put the movie on, and then all of a sudden the mother is in the bathroom. I think it's the bathroom or the closet one, and then all of a sudden she's coming towards her, and then she's screaming. Uh, Evie is, and then it goes black, and all of a sudden you're hearing children or babies crying, and then pipes and all that kind of shit, and it just like um, I'm not the biggest fan of like paranormal movies because I'm not a big believer in all that stuff because I'm one of these types of people, and I'm being very frank, very honest. I'm one of those I need to believe it in order to see it. You know what I'm saying? Now, of course, people will be like, well, what about movies like Freddy or Jason and shit like that? That is your basic horror films where it's like, yeah, it's not true, but it's also kind of, you got your campiness, you got your horror elements and stuff like that where it's like you don't need to believe it. It's because you're watching it to be entertained. At least that's my reason. I'm not scared of it. But then stuff like, you know, um, the clock going backwards or paintings going upside down to crosses being turned upside down and you're like, did I leave the door open? It's all of a sudden it's open and you know, again, I just I don't believe those things. I'm not saying that they can't happen, but I don't know. I'm just one of those like, okay, I need to see it in order to believe it. It's like Santa Claus, right? Never seen Santa Claus, and he doesn't exist. So, but yeah, this movie undertone was very underwhelming. That's what it was. Um, I mean, we can dive into some reviews if we shall. This first one is, and I mean, also let's start out with the the pricing of tickets these days. Can we talk about that? Can we talk about that? And this is why I don't really go to the theaters often, unless it's something like I really want to see that, and I want to see it in like the biggest format. You know what I'm saying? So this one gives it a 5 out of 10. Not worth a $15 movie ticket, and I bet $15 is one of those what it may be today as far as I don't know, going during the day type price because $15 is kind of cheap comparing like if you're going like opening night or whatever, and it's typically like $25 for one ticket. For one ticket. And then that's not including you getting your snacks, right? Me personally, because snacks are probably like more expensive, I try not to get anything. Like the most I'll ever get is like some water. And water that's probably like $6 or $7 for a fucking basic bottle of water. Like, are you fucking kidding me right now? That's where they get you. They get you with that shit. Anyway, that's just me ranting. I had a lot of hope for this movie and was really looking forward to it. Overall, how it ended and how it was played out was pretty bad. Totally agree. There was a few good scares in it. The rest of the movie is just bad. If it's your first time watching it, a horror movie in theaters, this is one not to attend. 5 out of 10 stars. And I think 5 out of 10 is being very generous if you're asking me. I'm on without even going to the rest of them. I'm gonna give it like a fucking maybe a 3. That's me being generous. The next one is ooh, this is a long one. Gives it a 4 out of 10. Consuming other people's trauma as background noise. There is something about A24, a certain sense of fatigue. Once an indie production company with modern art house elevated horror, it now often feels like a rabbit hole for ambitious ideas that never fully land. And on that note, I'm not the biggest A24 horror fan. It's like they're really trying to elevate horror, and it sometimes it just doesn't land. Um, like for this one, A24. Mm-mm, nope. That's exactly where Undertone, the debut feature from director Ian Tucson, left me. I don't know who that is, but I guess that's his feature debut. Maybe I should start with a disclaimer. I am not the right audience for this kind of film, and that matters. Undertone plays with a very specific mix of digital obsessive trends, true crime podcast, post lockdown vibes, and the cringe idea of resurfacing demonic urban legends without ever transcending them. If creepy pasta fueled supernatural horror is haunting you, late night late night guilty pleasures, this film is definitely for you. But for someone like me who gets haunted by the most unsettling and disturbing stories that linger ones, the ones I can relate to, feel, or think about for months or years, it's easy to skip, or at least something to approach with very low expectations. Undertone is an experiment in atmosphere. Evie, carrying the weight of the film almost entirely on her own, spends a whole runtime inside of her house, caring for her dying mother who lies in a catatonic state. Her only escape in this podcast. Oh, I'm sorry. I read that wrong. Her only escape is the podcast Undertone. By the way, that is the name of the podcast, if I hadn't already mentioned that. Which she runs in with Justin. Again, you don't see him, who ambiguously uh, row from the film's few points of intrigue, or at least the only element that gives me something genuinely chilling doubts. But no spoilers here, and intrigue alone isn't enough. Well, Justin proposes an episode about 10 disturbing audio tapes sent to him by a mysterious follower. Evie feels an uh, immediate pull, something she needs to dig into her own way. What follows is an obsessive search through unreliable sources and dark references, especially tied to the songs and tapes sung by a couple in their sleep. A film built around one of our everyday companions, like a podcast, could have offered a sharper commentary on our obsession with consuming trauma as entertainment, like voices from a TV left on in the background, never disturbing enough to make you turn it off or truly listen. Instead, it never evolves beyond a narrative device, something that only exists when Evie's headphones are on. when um oh sorry, what remains is a film where very little happens, but without a psychological or emotional depth needed to make the silly make this I cannot read. Make the stillness truly claustrophobic and unsettling. Despite the promise of its premise, the film leans heavily on its technical strengths. The sound design does most of the work, crafting an eerie, persistent tension, while the cinematography makes effective use of its confined setting in the house and its rooms. Unfortunately, even well developed, details can turn against you when the script feels like it gives its own ghost. My experience with Undertone was defined more by boredom than dread. I kept waiting for the film to either say something meaningful or push its premise into more disturbing territory, but it never quite commits at becoming at times predictable. This is certainly an audience for this. Fans of ambient, sensory driven horror films like Skimmerink, which never seen, or Pontypool. Don't know what that is. But for me, it felt more like melody of old, familiar ideas sold for something intriguing, restrained in its pursuit of innovation, and ultimately hollow. That was a lot going on there, but basically, I do agree with that. Um, it it did not deliver. I guess what it was promised. The like I said, the I think the last 5 minutes is where you get some I don't know creepiness. You know. Um, let's do this one. Let's see. Well, first let's see how long it is. Okay, it's not too bad. This one gives it a 6 out of 10. The movie about a podcast does not understand podcast. Well, you give it a 6 out of 10, and I think it's more than half. So I wanted to like this movie, and while there is a lot to admire about this technical craft, the writing ultimately lets the whole thing down. Given its tiny budget, the movie looks and sounds as good as a major production. So my hats off to the DP, production designer, and everyone involved in shaping the sound of this film, which is central to its premiere. The direction is also solid, though there is only so much the writer director can do with long stretches of its protagonist simply listening to an audio while nothing happens around her. So true. The movie apparently began life as a potential horror podcast, and maybe that would have been a better fit. A major gripe for me is how the writer, like so many of the film and television, does not understand podcasting. This entire movie hinges on a podcast for the protagonist recording remotely with an unseen male co host. At times, the show appears to be pre recording at 3 a.m. for some reason I never understood. At others, the show as a live 3 a.m. random people can call in. There's an outro that states that new episodes drop on Fridays wherever you get your podcast, but listeners can call in? Question mark. When the protagonist says she needs a minute, her co-host immediately tells her they can just continue recording in a couple of days. None of it makes sense, and it blows my mind that people writing scripts today simply do not understand how podcasting works. You may find as a minor gripe, but the entire movie is built around the fictional podcast. The mythos behind the alleged supernatural occurrence is interesting, but the actual horror is the on the ground. Not much is happening. We give an Exorcist 3 style final where spaghetti is thrown at the wall in the hope of something sticks. The script needed a revision. Meanwhile, everybody does a really good job of fleshing out those bones as best as possible. But if you're interested in the creepy story of something discovering a series of escalating recordings, I recommend you track down Session 9 instead. Um, I somewhat agree with that. I mean, I don't. There's certain podcasts that I listen to. I I don't have my own podcast, so I don't really know how podcasts work. I would just assume that you're recording, and then you can edit it and then air it. That's my assumption there. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. We'll do one more, and we'll leave it as that. Okay, Jack 1770 says, "Constant dread. The movie is honestly really scary, but not in a typical way. It didn't rely on jump scares at all, which made it feel way more intense." Did it though? Did it? Um, Instead of giving you those quick moments of shock and then letting you relax, it just kept this constant tension the entire time. The audio and the soundtrack were a huge part of that. There were so many subtle, unsettling sounds that just made everything feel off and uncomfortable. The camera work added it to some shots just lingered longer than you expect, or were framed in a way that made you feel like something bad was about to happen, even though nothing really did. The whole movie just felt really unsettling from start to finish. Not just scary, but deeply uncomfortable in a way that gets under your skin. There's this constant feeling that something isn't right, and it never really goes away. What made it stand out to me is that the tension never really got released. You're just sitting there feeling uneasy the whole time, which honestly made it way scarier the most than most horror movies. It sticks with you after because the constant pressure instead of just a few big moments. Um, I don't know what you watched, but this was not it. Okay, so that's gonna be it for me. Like I said, I give it a 3 out of 10. This movie was so fucking boring for me, and for those who liked it, congratulations for you. Congratulations. I didn't get it. Um, there was nothing scary about it. Um, and like a few people were stating, um, it's meant to be a like a podcast, listening to or relating to other horror podcasts, talking about those, something that goes on, and therefore they are listening to recordings that got sent in. So again, the last 5 minutes for me was a little creepy. I'm not going to say scary, but creepy. But other than that, mm-mm, not for me. Not for me. But again, hey, if you liked it, that's awesome. Awesome for you. But I'm just not one of these people for these, as they want to call it, elevated horror. A24 just doesn't hit for me when it comes to horror films. Um, Now there has been some horror films that I guess are elevated horror. Um, like Talk to Me. Talk to Me was, I like that movie. That was a pretty awesome film. Movies like that and that same note. Uh, I could dig with something like that. Um, but this one, nah, didn't work for me. Sorry, did not work for me. But anyway, that's it. That's for me today. If you had watched this movie, let me know. Drop your comments down below on what you thought about it. If you haven't and plan on it, I'm letting you know right now. It's you may sleep on it. You just might sleep on it. But just giving you a warning there. Anyway, if you haven't already, please click the link below and subscribe. And yeah, see you next time. All right, peace out.